Hello everyone. Before we begin our descent, make sure to like and subscribe to Hush Ledger. Leaving a comment telling us where you're listening from helps the algorithm keep you in the dark with us. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Man in the Diner. I used to be a long-haul trucker, still am, I suppose, though I haven't been behind the wheel of a rig since that night. The life is a tapestry of diesel fumes, bad coffee, and the hypnotic, endless unspooling of asphalt under your tires. Your world becomes the cab of your truck, and the rest stops and all-night diners are temporary, flickering oases. This particular oasis was a place called Rose Ritz and Griddle, a lonely box of light off Interstate 80, somewhere in Nebraska. It was to 17 a.m. according to the cracked digital clock on my dash. The parking lot was a sea of black, broken only by the pools of sickly orange from the sodium vapor lights. I pulled my Peterbilt in next to one other truck, an old Freightliner with a faded mural on the side, and trudged towards the diner's glow. The air inside was a familiar blend of stale coffee, fried grease, and the faint, sweet scent of butterscotch candies from a bowl at the register. It was empty, save for a tired-looking waitress named Brenda, according to her name tag, who was refilling ketchup bottles with a kind of grim resignation. I took a booth by the window, the red vinyl seat cracking softly under my weight, and ordered the breakfast platter. The world outside the window was a void. About 10 minutes later, the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in. He was average, jeans, a dark windbreaker, a baseball cap pulled low. He moved with a quiet, deliberate economy. He didn't look at me or at Brenda. He just slid into the booth directly behind me, his back to my back. I felt the bend shift as he settled in. My food arrived. I was focused on the plate, on the simple, greasy comfort of eggs and bacon. But then I became aware of it, a sound, from the booth behind me. A low, wet, rhythmic, chewing. It was loud, unnervingly so. It wasn't the sound of someone enjoying a meal. It was a viscous, smacking sound, like something being torn apart. I could hear him swallowing, a thick, gulping noise that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I tried to ignore it. I focused on my own food, but the sound seemed to fill the quiet diner, drowning out even the hum of the fluorescent lights. I glanced at Brenda. She was frozen behind the counter, a ketchup bottle in one hand, her eyes wide and fixed on the booth behind me. She was pale, terrified, voice drops to a whisper. The smell hit me then. A sour, rotting odor, like meat left in the sun. It was coming from his booth. It was so potent, so raw, that my stomach turned. I pushed my plate away. The chewing continued, relentless, wet, choking. I had to see, I had to know what was making that sound. I pretended to drop my napkin, and as I bent down to pick it up, I glanced under the gap between the booths. I saw his feet. He was wearing work boots, caked with dark, damp mud. And between them, on the linoleum floor, was a small, dark pile of something. It looked like fur and bone. My blood went cold. I sat up straight, my heart hammering against my ribs. The chewing stopped. The diner was silent again, a dead, heavy silence. I could feel him, feel his presence behind me, a cold spot in the room. I didn't dare turn around. Then, I heard a soft, wet laugh. A gurgling, choking sound that was anything but human. That was it. I threw a 20 on the table, not caring if it was enough, and I stood up. I kept my eyes fixed forward, on the exit, and I walked. I didn't run. I walked, every instinct screaming at me to sprint, to not let him see my back. As I pushed the door open, the bell chiming a cheerful, normal sound, I heard his voice. It was a rasp, a whisper that seemed to crawl across the room and into my ear. Safe travels. I didn't look back. I got into my truck, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I peeled out of that parking lot, the tires screeching. In my rearview mirror, I saw him still sitting in the booth. He hadn't moved. But as the distance grew, I saw his hand come up, and he slowly, deliberately, tipped the brim of his cap. I drove until the sun came up. I never went back to Rose. I called the company from a motel estate over and quit. I still don't know what he was, or what he was eating. But sometimes, when I'm in a quiet place, I can still hear that wet, chewing sound. And I remember his wish from me. Safe travels. It wasn't a wish. It was a threat. Story 2. The Licked Hand. When I was 7, my grandmother moved in with us. She was a sweet, frail woman who smelled of lavender and always had a roll of butterscotch candies in her apron pocket. But she also carried with her the strange, old-world superstitions of her youth. One of them was a story she told me one night when I was scared of the dark, a story she called The Licked Hand. She told me that a long time ago, a little girl lived in a big house with only her dog for company. One night, during a terrible storm, she heard a news report on the radio. A dangerous, insane murderer had escaped from the local asylum. The announcer said the killer could be identified by his habit of licking his lips, a slow, wet, dragging sound of his tongue. The girl was terrified. She locked all the doors and windows, and she and her dog, a little terrier, hid under her bed. Hours passed. The storm raged. Then, from the hallway, she heard it. Slow, wet sound with the tongue, a slow, wet, dragging sound. The sound of someone licking their lips. She was paralyzed with fear. But then, she felt a familiar, rough, wet sensation on her hand dangling off the side of the bed. Her dog was licking her. A wave of relief washed over her. Her dog was there. She was safe. Comforted by this, she eventually fell asleep. In the morning, when she woke up, she crawled out from under the bed. And that's when she found it, her dog. Its throat was slit, and it was stuffed under her bed skirt. And written on the wall in what she hoped was mud were the words, "Humans can lick too." I was terrified of that story for years. It became a family legend, a thing we'd whisper at sleepovers to scare each other. As I grew up, I forgot about it. It became a silly childhood memory. Fast forward to last year, I was 24, living alone in a small studio apartment on the 3rd floor of an old brownstone. My only companion was my cat, Mittens. One Tuesday night, I was woken by a sound from the local news channel I'd fallen asleep to. A reporter was detailing a breakout from the state penitentiary, a man convicted of 3 brutal murders. The reporter, his voice grave, mentioned a peculiar, known habit of the inmate. A nervous tic. He was constantly licking his lips. A cold dread, ancient and familiar, trickled down my spine. The story, my grandmother's story. It was ridiculous, I told myself, a coincidence, but I got up. I checked the deadbolt on my front door. I checked the latch on my single window overlooking the fire escape. It was locked. I went back to bed, my heart thumping, Mittens purring at my feet. I lay in the dark for what felt like hours, listening to the sounds of the city, a siren in the distance, the hum of my refrigerator. Then, I heard it. A soft, scraping sound from the hallway outside my apartment. I held my breath. It stopped. A moment of silence. Then, slow, wet sound with the tongue, a slow, wet, dragging sound. The sound of someone running their tongue over their lips. My blood turned to ice. I was that little girl again, paralyzed under her bed. The sound came again, closer this time, right outside my door. Slow, wet sound. I pulled my hand back under the covers, my entire body trembling. This wasn't happening. This was a story. Then, I felt it, a rough, wet sensation on the fingers I had just pulled back under the duvet. A familiar, sandpaper-like lick. Mittens, he was comforting me. A sob of relief caught in my throat. It was just my cat. The sound outside must have been my neighbor. I was safe. The fear began to recede, replaced by a weary exhaustion. I fell back asleep, my hand resting on Mittens' warm, purring body. The next morning, Sunlight streamed through my window. I felt foolish. I stretched and swung my legs out of bed, ready to start the day. I looked around for Mittens. He wasn't on the bed. He wasn't on his usual perch on the windowsill. "Mittens," I called. My eyes fell on the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar. It had been closed when I went to bed. A new, cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. I walked slowly to the door, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor. I pushed it open. The bathroom was empty. The shower curtain was drawn. My hand shook as I reached for it. I yanked it back. There was Mittens. His little body was lying in the dry tub. His throat. It was, and written on the white tile wall in a reddish-brown substance, were two words. Two words I knew would be there before I even saw them. "Humans lick too. I don't live alone anymore. I can't." And I never, ever let my hand hang over the side of the bed. The smiling man on the bicycle ... My insomnia is a cage. It locks me in when the rest of the world is sleeping. The only thing that helps is walking. Not a casual stroll, but a determined, miles-long trek through my sleeping suburb. I know every cracked sidewalk, every house with a single, perpetually flickering porch light, every sprinkler system that hisses to life at 3 a.m. It was on one of these walks, a Tuesday in late October, that I first saw him. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and decaying leaves. I was on Hemlock Drive, a long, straight road line with identical ranch-style houses, all dark. My sneakers made a soft, rhythmic scuff on the pavement. That's when I heard it, a faint, high-pitched whine. A bicycle chain. I turned. About a block behind me, under the glow of a street lamp, a man was riding a bicycle. It was an old-fashioned thing, a cruiser with a large, silver front fender that caught the light. He was pedaling slowly, methodically. There was something off about his posture, too straight, too still. As he passed under the street lamp, the light illuminated his face. And he was smiling, not a small, pleasant smile. A wide, grotesque grin that stretched from ear to ear, his teeth gleaming bone-white in the darkness. A shiver went down my spine. It was unnatural. Who smiles like that, alone, on a bike, at 3 in the morning? I picked up my pace, telling myself I was being ridiculous. He was just a weird guy. Maybe he was happy. But the sound of the bicycle chain seemed to grow louder, closer. I risked another glance back. He was still there, maintaining the exact same distance. And he was still smiling, his eyes fixed directly on me. His face was a mask of pure, unblinking joy. I crossed the street, my heart starting to thud a little harder against my ribs. The whine of the bicycle chain mirrored my turn. He crossed the street, too. Okay. Now I was scared. This wasn't a coincidence. I cut through a neighbor's yard, the dew-soaked grass soaking my ankles. I heard the thump-thump as his bike tires went off the curb and back onto the street, seamlessly following my path. I started to jog. The whining grew more insistent, the chain spinning faster. He was speeding up. I broke into a full sprint, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I dared to look back. He was pedaling faster now, but his body was still eerily still, his back ramrod straight, that insane smile plastered on his face. The gap was closing. I could see the details of his clothes, a dark windbreaker, slacks. He looked like an accountant on a joyride from hell. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, my fingers slick with sweat. I couldn't run home. I couldn't lead him to my door. I saw the community park up ahead, its playground a skeletal shadow in the night. I veered towards it, scrambling over the low fence, my lungs burning. I ducked behind the large, molded plastic slide, pressing myself into the small, dark space beneath it. Sound of a deep, panicked breath. The whining of the bicycle chain stopped. The silence was somehow worse. I crouched there, trembling, listening. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears and the distant hum of the freeway. Had I lost him? I held my breath, peering out through a gap in the plastic. He was standing at the entrance to the playground. He had dismounted from his bike, which was now leaning against the fence. He was just standing there, still, smiling. His head was tilted, as if listening. His eyes scanned the darkness, and for a terrifying second, I felt them pass over my hiding spot. He took one step forward, then another. His shoes made no sound on the wood chips. He was walking towards the slide. I was trapped. There was no way out. I squeezed my eyes shut, a child's instinct, as if not seeing him would make him disappear. I heard the soft crunch of a wood chip right next to the slide. I could smell him now, faint, coppery scent, like old pennies and stale sweat. Voice drops to a whisper. He didn't grab me. He didn't say a word. I felt a presence, a coldness, hovering just outside my hiding place. And then I heard it, a sound, low and soft, right by my ear. A wet, smacking sound, the sound of him, licking his lips. Then, footsteps, walking away. The high-pitched whine of the bicycle chain started up again, fading slowly into the distance. I stayed under that slide until the sky began to lighten to a pale, sickly gray. When Afshali crawled out, my body stiff and frozen, the park was empty. There was no sign of him. But on the wood chip path, right where he had stood, was a single, glistening drop of saliva. I never walk at night anymore. My insomnia is worse than ever. But I'd rather be a prisoner in my own home than ever see that smiling man again. The voice in the drain. I'm a plumber by trade. I've seen things clogged in pipes that would make your stomach turn. But I've never believed in ghosts. My world is pipes and wrenches, things you can see and touch. That changed on a job at the old Crestview Apartments, a 12-story building from the 60s that had a reputation for being troubled. To super, a guy named Dave with a permanent layer of sweat on his forehead called me for a job on the 10th floor. Tenanting 1B was complaining about a nose, not a rattle or a bang, a voice coming from her bathroom sink drain. I chuckled when he told me, probably just air in the pipes, Dave, or your tenants got a few screws loose. He didn't laugh. Just check it out, Leo. Please, she's a nice old lady, Mrs. Gable. So I went. Apartment 10B smelled of mothballs and overcooked cabbage. Mrs. Gable was a wisp of a woman, her hands trembling as she led me to the bathroom. It was a tiny, pea-green tiled room with a rust-stained pedestal sink. It talks to me, she whispered, her eyes wide with a fear that seemed genuine. At night, it sounds lonely. I gave her my best reassuring smile. Let's have a listen. Then, I turned on the faucet. Water gushed out, a normal sound. I turned it off. Silence. See, probably just water hammer. I can install a arrestor. Shh, she hissed, holding a finger to her lips. Wait. We stood there in the silent, humid bathroom. I shifted my weight, impatient, and then I heard it. Faint, at first, like a radio playing in another room. A voice, distorted by water and distance, but unmistakably a voice. It was murmuring. I couldn't make out the words. My professional skepticism cracked. I leaned in, my ear hovering just over the drain. The porcelain was cold against my skin. The voice grew slightly clearer. It was a man's voice, soft and pleading. Voice becomes slightly distorted, echoing. Is anyone there? Please, it's so dark. I jerked my head back. Mrs. Gable was watching me, her expression saying, I told you so. My heart was hammering. There had to be a logical explanation, a prank. A pipe running next to a neighbor's TV, but the layout of the building didn't support that. It's been going on for weeks, she said. It started with whispers, Nat. It knows my name. I had to be sure. I got my tools. I dismantled the P-trap under the sink, the curved pipe that holds water to block sewer gases. I expected to find a kid's walkie-talkie or something. But it was just empty. A little dirty water spilling out. I snaked the drain, pushing the cold metal wire deep into the building's guts. It met no obstruction. I put it all back together, my hands unsteady. The whole time, The faint, murmuring voice continued, a constant, unsettling stream of sound from the dark hole. Distorted voice, can you hear me? Don't leave, I was so cold. I finished and stood up. Mrs. Gable, I don't know what to tell you. She just nodded, a sad, resigned look on her face. It's okay, dear, you get used to it. I packed my tools and got out of there as fast as I could. I told Dave I couldn't find anything wrong. He paid me in cash and didn't ask any questions. That was 6 months ago. I tried to forget about it. Then, last week, the bathroom sink in my own apartment started making a gurgling sound. It was just a clog, I told myself. Hair and soap scum. I got out my plunger. As I was working it, the clog broke free with a suckling sound. And in the sudden silence that followed, just before the water started draining normally, I heard it. A voice, faint, but clearer than before. Horribly clear, voice drops to a terrified whisper, slightly distorted. It didn't say hello, it didn't ask for help, it said my name. Leo, and then it laughed. A wet, gurgling, knowing laugh that came right up through the pipes and into the heart of my home. I don't fix sinks anymore. I can't, because now I know what's down there in the dark, and it knows me.